With the exciting news of Uzumaki manga being turned into a mini-series, many fans have rejoiced and are now patiently waiting for that oh sweet Junji Ito story that we all know and love. But did you know that this isn't the first time Uzumaki has taken on a different media form? Ta-da! This is Uzumaki, also known as Spiral, released in the year 2000. Even with Junji Ito having a cult following, this film really hasn't been mentioned, anywhere. Which I found to be quite strange because Uzumaki is arguably one of Junji Ito's most popular manga. So today, I'll be taking a look at this film and seeing if it's secretly a masterpiece, or if there's a good reason as to why it hasn't been talked about much. I believe it is important to start with the context of this film so we can get a better idea as to how it was produced. The director goes by the name of Hukujinski, who, from what I have seen, hasn't done much directing in his career. I may be wrong, but there isn't very much information I could get on him. He also produced another film based on a different Junji Ito manga, but that will be for another day. This movie only had a budget of 1 million, and just for comparison, Gladiator had a budget of 103 million, and that was out in the same year. Another key aspect that heavily influences how the movie was produced was that the Uzumaki manga wasn't even completed yet, so combining all these factors, it doesn't look very promising. Upon the beginning of the film, it follows pretty similar to the manga. We are introduced to someone explaining us the story of their hometown, Kurozuko. I am cultured, as you can tell. And immediately after that, we are introduced to a dead guy with the camera spinning around. Fitting, I would say. Now, I really enjoyed this introduction, as it doesn't reveal too much or too little for the audience, but it gives it just that little bit of an edge to wrap yourself into it. Also, I might add, that the opening soundtrack just screamed old school horror, and it was absolutely delightful. We are also shown the main character Kiri, played by Eriko Hatsune. I feel that she was well casted for this role. She's serious and well-mannered, but can also be seen to have a caring attributes much like her manga equivalent, and her acting is alright for the most part. There are characters coming up that certainly stand out to me. Speaking of which...
Yamaguchiか。
びっくりした？
え？
びっくりしたみたいだね。
当たり前でしょ。
怒ったのかい？びっくりさせるのは僕の趣味なんだ。
ああ、そうですか。いいご趣味だこと。
So, as you can see, the film does not shy away from strange editing, which, don't get me wrong, I admire, but it doesn't really evoke an eerie or unsettling scene. Instead, I feel that this is more comedic, which doesn't really fit the situation. Then we meet Shuichi Saito's father, admiring the shell of a snail. Also, I am completely butchering these names. I know that by fact, so apologies. This scene is practically identical in the manga. It's just missing the iconic Junji Ito art style, but I'll get to that in the later section of the video. Now we are introduced to Kiri's childhood friend and romantic interest, Shuichi Saito, played by Fi Fan. And let me tell you, this guy's performance is probably the creepiest thing about this film. His cold stare, empty words that lack emotion, and those booty cheeks. But in all seriousness, his character in here is pretty different to the manga. He was shown to show pretty intense emotion in various scenes. Here, Shuichi Saito pulls me out of situations that would normally be creepy or emotional, just because of his acting. The actor, Fi Fan, had no experience in acting before this film, and unfortunately, it's pretty telling. So, skipping ahead just a bit, we come across a scene that I've surprisingly really enjoyed. Shuichi's father and Kiri's father are talking about the spiral shape and how Shuichi's father would like to get one from Kiri's father. Maybe I could have worded that better, but... oh well. The green tint that is used in the whole film is so prevalent here, which really provides an eerie and unsettling atmosphere. Yes, it isn't derived from the manga art style, but it really stands out enough on its own here for me. It only has two characters talking and the white noise that fills up the room. So I could just keep going like this. This happened in the scene, this didn't happen in the manga, this happened in the manga. So yeah, I won't continue doing that because I think it can end up being pretty repetitive, and I didn't really want to give away too much spoilers. I mainly just wanted to demonstrate just the way the narrative has changed in the film compared to the manga. Also, this fucking happens? So we just get some more basic character development, yada yada yada. I start to lose interest at this point, as it's really just been one big build up and I'm not that attached to the characters like I would be in the manga. Yes, it has been known that Junji Ito's main characters kind of lacked that super in-depth character development, but it's not really about that, it's about the visuals, but because the visuals aren't that strong here, we're kind of just left with those characters. Later on, you can definitely tell when the narrative starts following the manga, since, well, there wasn't any manga to go off by at that time. This is when it gets to the lowest point in my opinion. The origins of the spirals aren't interesting and I feel that it has way too much time spent on it, but then this movie's ending completely threw me off guard and it had me awake again. I won't spoil it, but trust me, it's pretty funny. So now I really want to get into the meat of what I liked about this film and what I didn't like about this film, and this will ultimately be what I base my final thoughts on. The pros. The setting in this movie to me is one of the highlights of the film. It follows pretty closely to how the manga presents itself, accompanied by the green tint they filmed with, and the editing is fantastically eccentric. The close-ups on the faces, although cheesy at times, help create the sense of being trapped or surrounded, and that aesthetic really shines sometimes. The acting in some of these characters are really good. Kitty's mother and father, I can tell, had really got into their scenes and made it pretty interesting. The soundtrack is oh so marvelous, and I find myself at times going back to it, and I totally recommend it to anyone. But now, we are moving to the cons. It can definitely get boring at times in the film, and it can totally drag it out. The origins of the story especially just seem so uninteresting. It probably would have been better if it was left out. You know how I just praised the acting a second ago? Well, for some characters it isn't so true. The biggest downer being Fifan's performance, but to be fair, it was his first time, so I can't really fault him on that. The manga follows each event separately in each chapter. For example, chapter 1 is about Suichi's father, chapter 7 is Jack in the Box, etc. So I feel like that each event that happens in the manga is lackluster in the film because it isn't given the appropriate time to shine. And this isn't inherently the film's fault because, unfortunately, this is just one of the consequences that can occur when making a live action from a media form like manga. My biggest issue with the film, and as to why I think it hasn't been very successful, is because it's live action, and the limitation that comes with that media form, as well as another huge factor that the manga wasn't actually finished when the film was in production. This film suffers from the similar reasons that the Junji Ito collection went through, and that's because of the translation from the manga to animation, which wasn't very good. It looked a bit cheesy and silly, much like the Uzumaki film. Which is one of the reasons why I am so excited for the miniseries, as the trailer looks almost identical to the manga. The visual aspect is such a huge part of Uzumaki, so when that isn't a key factor, it doesn't hit the same way for the audience. Junji Ito relies heavily on the use of elements that I feel can't be achieved through live action. For example, his intricate lines and harsh tones really bring out this distinct style that is instantly recognizable. I could honestly talk about his artwork for hours, but I don't think you would want to sit through that. And I'm sure you could argue that if Uzumaki was to be produced into live action nowadays, with the advanced technology and the fact that the manga is finished, but I have my doubts, because I just don't think you can replicate the artwork into that media form. So, until that day comes, I'll leave you with this. If you want to experience Uzumaki at its finest, then I don't recommend the film. You're better off just sticking to the manga. But the movie is definitely not the worst ever. I was still entertained at some points, even if I felt some moments were dragged on, and I just wasn't that interested.